Remember that feeling? There was a time when this logo on the screen was an absolute guarantee that your next 2 hours were going to be amazing. Iron Man, The Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame, 23 movies, one story, 0 real missteps. By the time it was over, this franchise had made more money than any other in the history of film, over $30 billion worldwide. Then in 2021 came one more perfect night at the movies, Spider-Man: No Way Home. 3 generations of Spider-Man, 3 generations of fans, grown men crying in theaters. And then, something changed. The formula that once felt unbeatable suddenly stopped working. A movie about cosmic gods that felt like a company retreat, a quantum realm that looked like a screensaver, a secret invasion that nobody noticed. 5 years, a dozen disappointments, and a fan base asking a question Marvel never had to answer before. What happened to you? To understand the fall, you have to understand what Marvel became after Endgame, not just a movie studio, a content machine. Before Endgame, Marvel released 1, maybe 2 projects a year. Every one of them mattered. Every one of them moved the story forward. Under then CEO Bob Chapek, the mandated Disney changed. The new streaming service needed content, constantly, and Marvel was the crown jewel. Disney Plus needed shows, WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk, Secret Invasion. 8 new series in 2 years, on top of the movies. Suddenly, watching a Marvel movie meant homework. 3 shows just to understand who a character even was. And the numbers show it. During the Infinity Saga, Marvel movies routinely scored in the 90s with critics. By 2023, that gap between critics and audiences had never been wider. Some releases were landing in the 50s, even lower. Individual episodes could still shine, but the sense of one connected story, the exact thing that made the Infinity Saga special in the first place, had quietly disappeared. Even Kevin Feige, the man who built this empire, eventually admitted it himself. For the first time ever, quantity trumped quality. It's a hell of a thing to admit. It's an even bigger thing to fix. So, let's look at what that actually cost. Eternals, 2021, the lowest rated movie in the entire history of the MCU up to that point. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, 2023, the film meant to launch Marvel's next decade around a new villain. It opened weak, it closed weaker. Secret Invasion, also 2023, one of the lowest rated shows Marvel Studios has ever put out. Thor: Love and Thunder, 2022, became the lowest rated Thor movie in the franchise's history, a sharp fall from the acclaim of its predecessor, Ragnarok. And then there's The Marvels. Released in November 2023, the worst opening weekend in MCU history. Reported losses? Over $200 million. Some estimates put it closer to $300. Captain America: Brave New World, 2025, plagued by reshoots just months before release, landed right back down at Eternals numbers. 5 projects, 5 disappointments, all in under 4 years from the studio that used to define the word blockbuster. Put together, that's several $100 million in losses and half a decade of audience goodwill spent before Dr. Doom ever set foot on screen. But overproduction wasn't the only problem. Behind the scenes, the machine itself was breaking down. Take Blade, announced in 2019, still not released. 2 different directors have walked away. The script's been rewritten from scratch more than once. The release date has moved 5 times. By 2026, its own star, Mahershala Ali, had run out of patience. Asked about the project in public, he didn't hold back. If they wanted to do it, we would have done it. A Marvel movie canceled in everything but name, while the actor cast to lead it was still technically waiting. How does a studio worth billions of dollars not know what movie it's making? And it wasn't just one troubled project, it was the culture at every level, including the very top. For years, there was a quiet war inside Marvel itself, between Kevin Feige, the studio's creative head, and Ike Perlmutter, the longtime chairman who controlled the budgets. Feige reportedly came close to quitting entirely. In 2019, Feige won that fight. Disney pulled him out from under Perlmutter's control.
By 2023, Perlmutter was gone from the company altogether. Meanwhile, on the production floor, Marvel's own visual effects artists went public, describing 90-hour weeks, scripts changing mid-shoot, effects redone again and again against impossible deadlines. In 2023, the woman running it all, Victoria Alonso, Marvel's head of visual effects, was fired. It got ugly enough to end up in court. And by 2026, the studio found a new answer to the burnout. It started replacing the workload with AI. Over 1,000 jobs cut across Disney, a big chunk of them from Marvel's own visual development team. The studio that couldn't keep up with its own workload started replacing the workload with algorithms.
Marvel didn't just build a machine, it built an empire on faces, on stars, and one by one, it started losing control of them. Even the actors started saying it out loud. When directors like Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino publicly dismissed superhero movies as not cinema, it was Marvel's own stars, people like Simu Liu, who had to step up and defend the genre in public again and again. And it wasn't only critics from the outside. In 2020, Chris Pratt, Marvel's own Star-Lord, was publicly voted Hollywood's worst Chris in an online poll after backlash over his religious and political views. It got serious enough that Robert Downey Jr. and Mark Ruffalo had to step in and defend him in public, by name. But the deepest wound was still coming. Jonathan Majors was supposed to be next, the new Thanos, the face of the entire next saga as the Kang Conqueror. In 2023, he was arrested. Later that year, found guilty in court on assault charges. Marvel cut ties immediately. An entire 5-year plan gone. The Kang dynasty didn't just lose its villain, it had to be rewritten from the ground up. And then, Marvel made a decision that sounded almost impossible. They brought back Robert Downey Jr., not as Iron Man, as Dr. Doom. To understand why that's such a big deal, look at what Marvel had already lost. Iron Man, gone. Captain America, gone. Black Widow, gone. Black Panther, gone forever after the death of Chadwick Boseman. And now, Kang, gone too. Every single face the studio built its first decade around, gone one way or another before the next chapter had even really started. So Marvel reached for the most recognizable face still left in its arsenal. And it wasn't just Downey. Chris Evans is coming back too, after turning down about a dozen pitches to return as Captain America. By multiple accounts, it was the news about Downey that finally changed his mind. The two of them are close friends off-screen as well as on, and by several accounts, that friendship played its own quiet role in getting both of them back in the same room. No replacement villain since Major's firing has come close to carrying this kind of weight. Which raises the real question here. Is Marvel saving its universe, or just selling nostalgia one more time? Because underneath all of it, this was always a business story too. In 2022, Disney Plus lost subscribers for the first time ever. The streaming division was bleeding money. Within weeks, CEO Bob Chapek, the man who pushed for endless content, was gone, and Bob Iger was back running the company. In 2023, Iger cut about 7,000 jobs across Disney and reset the entire content strategy. Fewer shows made just to fill a schedule, more bets placed on things that could actually perform. And in March of 2026, Disney changed leadership again. Josh D'Amaro took over as CEO, succeeding Iger, the second full changing of the guard at the top of the company in less than 4 years. Which means the biggest gamble in Marvel's history, the one built around Robert Downey Jr., isn't just Kevin Feige's call anymore. It's being carried by an entirely new generation of leadership at the top of the company. So who exactly is Marvel betting its future on? In the comics, Dr. Doom has been around for over 60 years, created in 1962, the same year as his oldest and bitterest rivals, the Fantastic Four. He's often called the greatest villain Marvel has ever put on a page. Victor Von Doom, genius, ruler of his own country, Latveria, a supervillain who also happens to be, officially, a head of state with actual diplomatic immunity, scientist, sorcerer, politician. And in the comics, that confidence has gone even further than politics. In one of Marvel's most famous storylines, Doom didn't just rule a country, he held together the last surviving fragments of an entire shattered multiverse and briefly ruled over it as something close to a god. And absolutely unshakably certain that he is right. Doom doesn't think he's the villain. He thinks he's the only one smart enough, capable enough to actually save the world. Which, if you think about it, sounds a lot like a certain studio. Here's the problem Marvel now has to solve. For 15 years, audiences looked at this face and saw one person, Tony Stark. Now, they need you to see someone else entirely. And they're paying for that bet. Insiders report Downey's deal for both films is worth around $100 million. Marvel hasn't confirmed the number, but it hasn't denied it either. Downey himself has talked openly about the difference between the two roles. In his words, Tony Stark had the trauma that turned him into a hero. Doom got the exact opposite. And when the first Doomsday trailer dropped, Disney's stock went up overnight. This isn't just a movie anymore, it's a message to Wall Street. Naturally, that's created a swarm of theories. Marvel has confirmed that Secret Wars will reboot the MCU. Kevin Feige has said that much himself. What he hasn't confirmed is how. Rumor has it, Doom builds something called Battleworld, a patchwork planet stitched together out of broken universes. Unconfirmed, but if true, that's your reset button. There's even a theory going around that Downey isn't the only actor under that mask, that some of what we're seeing is a double, a decoy. We can't confirm that either, but it tells you something about how much scrutiny this one piece of casting is under. Fans dissecting individual frames of a trailer, looking for a hidden Tony Stark, looking for the catch. Can audiences ever look at Robert Downey Jr. and see Victor Von Doom instead of Tony Stark? Some of the people close to Doomsday believe this is Marvel finally learning its lesson, slowing down, focusing, betting on story over spectacle. Others believe it's the exact same instinct that got the studio here in the first place. Reach for the biggest, most expensive, most nostalgic swing available and hope it's enough. Marvel doesn't need another Avengers movie. It doesn't need another billion-dollar cameo. It needs a reason to care again. And now, Marvel has put that entire responsibility on the shoulders of one man, Robert Downey Jr., Dr. Doom. The question is no longer whether Marvel can bring back its past. The question is whether Dr. Doom can build its future. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe. More incredible stories are coming.